Hello guys, welcome to another video. Tensura X Fate, When the Time Reincarnated as Human by Vericishi. Chapter 2 Kirei Arrival Rin's Perspective, First Person. Satoru was in the kitchen, whipping up breakfast like he was a chef on some cooking show. The aroma of eggs and bacon filled the air, making my stomach growl. Despite his many annoying habits, I had to admit, my brother knew how to cook. "Here you go, Your Majesty," he said with a smirk, placing a plate in front of me. "Thanks, peasant," I shot back, rolling my eyes but secretly grateful. I dug in, savoring the food. "What's on the agenda today?" "Training, schoolwork, and then I'm diving into some game development," Satoru said, grabbing his own plate and sitting across from me. "Got a lot of work to do on the AI." "Of course," I muttered. "What else is new?" After breakfast, Satoru retreated to his room, shutting the door behind him. I could hear the faint hum of his computer starting up. That machine was practically an extension of him at this point. I was about to start my own training when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Kirei Kotomine standing there, his usual unreadable expression on his face. "Good morning, Rin," he said, his voice calm and steady. "May I come in?" "Sure, Kirei," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "What's up?" "I have some news," he said, his gaze piercing. "You're to be the next candidate for the Holy Grail War." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Me? Are you serious?" "Very," Kirei said. "You have shown great potential, and it is time for you to take on this responsibility." "But, why now?" I asked, my mind racing. "The war is still months away." "Preparation is key," he said simply. "You must be ready for anything." I nodded, trying to process the information. "Okay, thanks for letting me know." Kirei gave a small nod and turned to leave. "Good luck, Rin. You'll need it." As he walked out the door, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. Being a candidate was a huge honor, but it also meant immense pressure. I needed to talk to Satoru. I knocked on his door, but he didn't answer. Typical. I pushed it open and found him hunched over his desk, typing furiously. His room was a mess of cables, screens, and various tech gadgets. The walls were plastered with posters of video game characters and code snippets. "Satoru," I said, trying to get his attention. "Kirei just left. He said I'm going to be the next candidate for the Holy Grail War." He glanced up briefly, then went back to his screen. "That's great, Rin. Congrats." "You don't seem surprised," I said, frowning. "I had a feeling it would be you," he said, not looking up. "You're the best mage in our family." "Thanks, I guess," I said, a bit annoyed by his lack of enthusiasm. "What are you working on now?" "AI stuff," he said, finally leaning back and stretching. "I'm developing an AI that can fix bugs, optimize code, and even manage my computer systems. Think of it like a mix between Jarvis and Edith from Marvel." I raised an eyebrow. "Sounds complicated." "It is," he said, grinning. "But it's also fun. I'm working on a way to use photons and quantum mechanics to create a holographic 3D body for the AI. Imagine if it could manifest physically using spatial manipulation and magecraft. It's just a fun project." I couldn't help but be impressed, even if I didn't fully understand it. "So, you're trying to create an AI that can come to life?" "Pretty much," he said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "By coordinating photons in isolation and increasing their density, I can form a solid holographic body. If I can connect the eye to this body via some form of radiation or spatial manipulation, it could interact with the real world." "Wow," I said, genuinely amazed. "That sounds incredible." "Thanks," he said, looking pleased. "It's just a side project, but who knows, maybe it'll lead to something big." I shook my head, still processing everything. "You're something else, Satoru." "Yeah, well, someone has to keep things interesting around here," he said with a smirk. We lapsed into a comfortable silence, each lost in our own thoughts. Despite our bickering, I was glad to have him by my side. With the Holy Grail War approaching, we'd need each other more than ever. Chapter 3 In School Rin's perspective. The weekend had flown by in a blur of training and coding, and now it was Monday morning. I walked to school with a mixture of determination and mild irritation. Satoru had somehow managed to make me laugh despite the looming pressure of the Holy Grail War, but now it was back to the grind of school life. As soon as I stepped into the schoolyard, I saw Shinji Matu, her usual smug expression plastered on her face. She was surrounded by a gaggle of boys, all vying for her attention. Shinji had a way of making everyone feel like they were beneath her, and it irked me to no end. but we weren't friends, and I had no intention of changing that. Morning, Rin, Shinji called out, her tone dripping with false sweetness. I see you're still playing the solitary genius card. I rolled my eyes. Good morning to you too, Shinji. Still leading your fan club? She laughed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. Jealous much? Not everyone can be as adored as I am. Adored is one word for it, I muttered under my breath, pushing past her to get to class. I had no time for her theatrics today. In class, I found my usual seat and pulled out my notes. The teacher droned on about literature, but my mind was elsewhere. The upcoming war was always in the back of my mind, and I couldn't afford to let my guard down. Shinji's perspective as I strutted through the schoolyard, I couldn't help but enjoy the attention. Boys flocked to me like moths to a flame, and why shouldn't they? I was beautiful, intelligent, and knew exactly how to get what I wanted. Shinji, you look amazing today, one of the boys said, his eyes practically sparkling. Of course I do, I replied with a smirk. Tell me something I don't know. Are you free after school? Another boy asked, his face hopeful. I pretended to think about it, savoring the way they hung on my every word. Maybe. Depends on if anyone interesting asks me out. I caught sight of Rin Tasaka walking by, her usual cold demeanor in place. She thought she was so much better than everyone else, but she was just a lonely girl with no friends. I didn't understand why she acted like that life was so much more fun when you had admirers. Morning, Rin, I called out, making sure my voice carried. I see you're still playing the solitary genius card. She gave me a withering look. Good morning to you too, Shinji. Still leading your fan club? I laughed, flipping my hair. Jealous much? Not everyone can be as adored as I am. Adored is one word for it, she muttered, brushing past me. I shrugged it off. Rin wasn't worth my time. I had better things to do, like making sure everyone knew I was the queen bee of this school. Rin's perspective class dragged on, and I found myself doodling arcane symbols in the margins of my notebook. The bell finally rang, and I made my way to the cafeteria. I spotted Satoru sitting with his usual group of otaku friends, animatedly discussing something. Rune King Thor would totally wipe the floor with cosmic armor Superman, Satoru was saying, waving his hands for emphasis. The guy has the power of runes and magic on his side. No contest. You're insane, one of his friends replied. Cosmic armor Superman can adapt to any threat. It's literally built into his programming. I shook my head, grabbing a tray and filling it with whatever looked edible. Satoru's passion for these debates was something I found both endearing and exasperating. He could ace every subject without even trying, but he spent his free time arguing about superheroes and developing his game. As I sat down with my lunch, Shinji sauntered in, making a beeline for the table where the most popular boys in school were sitting. She leaned over, giving them a view of her cleavage, and they fell over themselves to pay her compliments. It was pathetic, really. Shinji's perspective lunchtime was my favorite part of the day. It was my chance to shine, to show everyone why I was the top girl in school. I walked over to the table where the hottest boys were sitting and leaned over just enough to give them a good look. Hey, guys, I purred. Mind if I join you? Of course not, Shinji, one of them said, practically drooling. I sat down, enjoying the attention. So, what's the gossip today? They filled me in on the latest rumors, and I pretended to care, all the while keeping an eye on Rin. She was sitting alone, as usual. It was almost sad. Almost. Rin's perspective. The afternoon classes passed in a blur, and before I knew it, the final bell rang. I packed up my things and headed out, eager to get home and continue my training. The Holy Grail War wasn't going to wait, and I needed to be ready. As I left the school, I saw Shinji flirting with another group of boys. She was so predictable. I shook my head and kept walking. I had more important things to worry about. Shinji's perspective. After school, I continued to bask in the attention of my admirers. I loved the power I had over them, the way they would do anything to please me, but it was getting boring. I needed a new challenge. I spotted Satoru walking out of the school gates, his bag slung over his shoulder. He was a mystery to me, always so focused on his own world. Maybe it was time to see what made him tick. Rin's perspective. At home, Satoru was back in his room, working on his AI project. I had to admit, his dedication was impressive, even if it was a bit obsessive. Hey, Satoru, I said, knocking on his door. How's it going? He looked up, his eyes bright with excitement. Great, I think I've figured out a way to improve the AI's responsiveness. It's going to be amazing. I smiled, Despite myself. I'm sure it will be. Just don't forget to take a break every now and then, okay? Sure thing, sis, he said, already turning back to his screen.